Okay. Let's see. Okay. Okay, people are starting now to log in, so let's give it 1 minute, more or less.
Okay.
Hello, everyone, and we're waiting for everybody to join, so please sit tight. And in the meantime, maybe you want to use the chat to tell us where you are joining us from today. And I think Declan is game for Ask Me Anything About Data, so go ahead and ask your questions in the chat. Okay. All right. Let's give it 1 more minute. I'm going to get started with the introduction just to warm up. So hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Gala webinar. My name is Isabella Massardo. I'm content strategist here at Gala. And the topic of today's presentation is leveraging data to drive results. And the presenter is Declan O'Droyan. I hope I pronounced it correctly. I tried to practice backstage, but sorry, Declan.
Better than most.
Okay, thank you. Declan manages the global business intelligence and data reporting team at United Language Group. And it's the first time that he presents at Gala, so welcome.
Thank you.
To all attendees, feel free to use the QA box for any questions that you might have for Declan. And I would invite you to do so throughout the presentation as you think of them. The webinar will be recorded. I'll send you a follow-up email with a link to the recording as soon as the recording becomes available on our website. So I'll just leave the floor to Declan and his presentation. So good luck.
Thank you, Isabella. As Isabella mentioned, my name is Declan O'Droyan. I'm the BI director at United Language Group. I've worked with ULG for just over 15 years at this point, originally in vendor management and supply chain, and more recently I've transitioned into the business analytics side of the house for just almost 8 years now at this point. I'll start with a brief overview of ULG and who we are. So we're a global language solutions provider. We have our headquarters in Minneapolis in the US. We have 9 offices in 7 different countries across the globe. Our European HQ is in little town of Galway in the west of Ireland, where I'm based myself. In terms of services, obviously we specialize in language services, primarily translation, interpreting, software localization, multimedia testing, engineering, global digital marketing, and related services. The core element of all of these services is localizing content for our customers, whether that's marketing their product and content to a global audience or providing a language service for a particular setting. These services are delivered across a range of diverse industries, including healthcare, finance, manufacturing, and technology. So like many of you, I'm sure, work within localization. The first question I always get when I tell people I work for a language solutions company is how many languages I speak. For me, the answer in short is not many. My background is not necessarily in linguistics, although I am from the Connemara Gaeltacht in Galway, so I grew up speaking Irish. Irish is my home language, so along with English, that's where my linguistic skills end. My journey into business analytics started during my time in vendor management, and coincides with ULG's first big step into the world of BI. So like many organizations at the time, data analytics consisted of siloed department-specific reporting. Individuals within the organization were developing their own reports, compiling, running Excel reports using data that they extracted from various sources. In many instances, this involved exporting data from our own proprietary systems, manually transforming this data each time to get the desired result. Our director of operations at the time, based on her experience of working with a tool called ClickView during her time in Boston Scientific, she understood the need to move to a consolidated BI tool. And ULG started working with ClickView just over 10 years ago at this stage. It had a transformative effect on data analytics within our organization. What were previously dozens of standalone manually generated reports were made available to users through dynamic apps within the ClickView environment. We created standardized connections to our main data sources. Data extraction processes were developed. Data quality improved significantly, which resulted in more relevant insight for users. And within 15 months of the implementation of ClickView, it was a 60% reduction in time spent creating and issuing data reports. So the first slide I'm showing here is just an example of some metrics from one of the early applications. So as I was working within the vendor management department. I was working within the vendor management department at the time. We had responsibility for all direct translation costs. I was tasked with developing a ClickView vendor management app within our new environment. As the dashboard itself was connected to our translation management database, and the data model was built to include all relevant linguistic vendor data. The areas of insight provided by this app focus primarily on external vendor costs, vendor availability, and performance. Developing this type of reporting within our proprietary transit management system would have been very costly. So the data developed by this app led to decisions which significantly improved vendor management performance. Average translation buy rates were reduced by just over 12%, and total savings of over $200,000 were achieved on language services within the first full year of implementing the application. We also had significant improvements in delivery times and vendor availability and capacity through the data provided within the application itself. With the, I suppose, the initial success of our initial implementation on specific apps, we developed further department-specific dashboards and applications to measure and analyze efficiency and productivity and service quality across a range of other business metrics. Data extraction processes were also refined. We used click native files, generating data from our production databases to add to the efficiency of our extraction and our data loads. The expanding range of these available apps did result in increased demand for access within ULG, and we purchased an additional 30 licenses at this point to give users greater access to ClickView within ULG. We also created content to train users on general ClickView usage as well as their specific applications. With the, I suppose, the wider adoption at this point of data analytics using ClickView within ULG, there was a greater demand for centralized management of the growing BI environment. In late 2018, the business intelligence team was created at ULG with responsibility for developing and managing the entire data reporting environment for all sites and departments within the organization. Our first task was to assess the existing environment, the efficiency of the apps in production, all the data extraction processes, and our entire ETL workflow, which is essentially the extraction, transformation, and the loading of our data. With the initial siloed nature of app development across different departments, this was a slow process and involved many discussions with relevant teams, users, stakeholders across the organization. The ClickView environment gradually expanded to over 40 applications or dashboards, providing department, client, and process-specific apps for users. This included the development of data connections to external third-party applications, such as our financial accounting software or sales CRMs, external applications used by production, and also applications requiring custom-built data connections. We were then able to use ClickView as a platform to integrate data between our internal systems and these third-party systems which were not integrated at the application level or at the system level, but which we were able to integrate from a data point of view to build, I suppose, a more holistic reporting environment for the organization. With, I suppose, the growth of the BI environment and increased usage of data reporting, there was an increase in active license users, but it also resulted in increased demand for regular reports to be issued on specific schedules, both internally and externally. Providing this data to unlicensed users required an additional solution, and initially it required a large element of data exporting from ClickView and distribution of reports through email. To address this, and the amount of administrative work involved in this process, we added a tool called InPrinting to our range of reporting software. InPrinting is essentially an application compatible with Click, specifically for the distribution and scheduling of reports and data. With this, we were able to automate the creation and distribution of standardized recurring data reports. And within 3 months of implementing InPrinting, the automation which we developed reduced the amount of admin time developing and compiling and issuing reports by over 65%. And this has evolved to the point where current day we have over 120 automation tasks which have been developed to distribute reports of various specifications to internal users as well as clients. We also use these automated reports to trigger actions for the recipients. So, for example, they become part of a process. So based on the data they receive on a given schedule, these automated reports can act as a trigger to kick off certain processes, and these have introduced many process efficiencies throughout ULG. In terms of stepping a little bit back to ULG's journey over the past number of years and how this has had a bearing on analytics within our organization. So during the time of this journey through data analytics, ULG has been expanding its presence primarily through the acquisition of varied language solutions providers. As you can see here on the slide here, just different dates in terms of companies acquired which became part of United Language Group. As with all acquisitions, there was a challenge in integrating these business lines into the overall structure of the organization. The same was also true from an analytics point of view. A number of new divisions of the new divisions which were acquired had some level of existing data reporting in place using assigned licenses or shared reporting in Power BI, but there was no consolidated management of these environments, which were primarily run through standalone or decentralized apps. In late 2019, we essentially had a decision to make in terms of how to integrate data from all these new business lines into a single reporting consolidated BI environment for ULG. We conducted a thorough review of the most suitable BI applications to take analytics to the next level within the organization. With this, we essentially decided to migrate from ClickView to ClickSense, which is, as you can tell by the name, it's a related tool, but a newer version of the application. Given that we had an extensive existing ClickView environment with, as I mentioned earlier, over 50 apps at this point, it was much easier to transition this to ClickSense than to an alternative BI tool. There's obviously compatibilities from back-end scripting point of views, which also helped, but the benefits of ClickSense provided our growing user base with more flexible and more accessible application, and the ability to carry out more refined self-service analytics. There were also reduced license constraints, which were very beneficial given our expanding internal requirements for user access. We converted our existing ClickView licenses to what are called analyzer licenses in ClickSense, and essentially we're able to expand or give ourselves greater licensing flexibility, which enabled us to further increase the number of click users within ULG. This was especially critical as the BI environment was now connected to the data from the new business lines we'd acquired and had much greater reach within ULG. The license structure we agreed also enabled us to continue running the legacy ClickView environment as we transitioned to ClickSense on a phased basis. There were a couple of key decision points prior to migrating, and one of them was whether to transition entirely to a SaaS-based or cloud-based ClickSense environment, or to remain with, or to set up an on-premise environment. We chose the Windows on-prem environment for two reasons at the time. Number one, the cloud version did not support our in-printing automation and had no suitable method at the time of facilitating large-scale distribution of automated reports, essentially to support what the environment we had in place already. There were also some constraints around application or dashboard size, some of which were very large at the time. So we launched ClickSense within ULG in late 2020, and we began the phased migration of applications from ClickView. We also installed the corresponding installation of in-printing or automation tool to accommodate the migration of all the necessary automation tasks. In terms of the initial migration to ClickSense, so again, it was just a brief example of how ClickSense was utilized, particularly to support the new business lines within ULG, and so it enabled us essentially to address existing problems for some of our newer divisions. A key focus of this was one of the companies you would have seen on the previous slide, previously called Language Select, which is our over the phone interpretation or OPI business, which previously had limited business analytics available. The nature of OPI in general, it requires multilingual interpreters to be available at any given time of day to support client needs. These can range from healthcare phone appointments to emergency calls or legal meetings. Immediate interpreter availability is critical given the sensitivity and urgency of many of these client calls. The OPI team previously had limited visibility into interpreter availability at various points throughout a given day. Developing reporting within their own existing management application would have been very time consuming and costly. By connecting ClickSense to the required application databases, we developed views to indicate peak call times versus qualified interpreters available, for example. This was also customizable across different variables, including interpreter certification requirements or languages. These views then provided the vendor management team with the data to enable more effective management of resources, ensuring peak demands were covered. The implementation of this particular app, which is a screenshot shown here, helped to reduce the proportion of failed calls or non-fulfilled calls by about almost 40%. So from 2.8 to 1.7 within its initial 90-day implementation. The time taken to connect to interpreters was also reduced by over 20% due to greater interpreter availability and greater management of capacity. These are obviously key metrics in client performance measurement within the OPI sector. Our existing data distribution through in-printing, obviously, as mentioned before, has facilitated a large amount of client-facing data reporting. However, at this point, we were now considering Click as a method of supporting dynamic data analysis for our clients. Our various production systems have elements of client reporting, as many do, accessible through client user access. However, supporting additional client demands through our software application development team was becoming less feasible for our IT team for several reasons. Obviously, developing new reporting elements within bespoke applications is time consuming and costly, and the time spent on this development also impacts critical feature development and application efficiency improvements. Given the ease of developing applications and reporting apps within ClickSense, creating the necessary reporting apps to our BI environment as address these constraints. The key issue we had to resolve, however, was was essentially the distribution of these client-facing apps. So how to enable direct client access to these apps within our Click environment rather than our internal applications. We reviewed a number of options, including embedding embedding the reporting within our applications. However, we proceeded with setting up a Click SaaS environment or a cloud environment to enable external web-based access for clients. We used a time-based licensing structure, which provided us with greater control of costs and also retained the option to scale as required. So for greater client demand, we're able to scale up and scale down client access as required. A brief example of a client-facing app within our reporting environment. So it essentially the BI environment within our Click Cloud environment enabled us to develop data solutions to issues impacting our customers. One of our larger clients from the manufacturing vertical had a challenge identifying and tracking tasks to be completed on their side as part of their production workflow. Within the Click Cloud app developed for this client, they now have full visibility of the current state of files within the production workflow. So this app essentially identifies all files which are awaiting different actions, including client reviewer action, and ensures the client steps are actioned promptly. The development of this app and the client accessing the data reduced the file process completion times for this customer by over 15% just by addressing this basic issue, essentially just providing the visibility into the data and essentially the current state of the workflow at any given point. In terms of I suppose current state, current goals, one of our main focuses at the moment is, as I mentioned already, is developing what we call data literacy within ULG. So obviously there's a huge increase in engagement with data within our organization, and something we've pushed quite a bit in terms of training and obviously accessibility for users within the organization. With the scale of users we have and the broad range of business units within ULG who are interacting with ClickSense, it's critical that individuals are engaging with their data and understand their data, derive accurate insight from their data, to manage their day-to-day and also provide insight in terms of actionable, in terms of actions to be taken. We're working to continue to improve data literacy through regular training on a team and individual basis, and obviously pushing the users to engage more regularly within their own environment, BI environments, and develop greater data analysis self-sufficiency. From a future state point of view, over the coming quarters and even current state, we are assessing the possibility of moving our entire internal environment to the cloud and to a SaaS-based environment. There's obviously a number of considerations involved in that. Some of the previously mentioned constraints, as well as data security, data pipeline development, pushing data to the cloud. However, key interest of potentially migrating our environment to the cloud is obviously leveraging machine learning in our existing analytics environment, which we are using to some degree at the moment. However, we'll be able to bring that to another level by essentially using AI and ML to increase efficiency within our existing data processes, and also using that to derive greater insight from our data, which we may not currently be getting. So essentially trying to continue that evolution from business reporting, I suppose, to business intelligence. Obviously, other additional benefits of migrating to the cloud are the reduction of infrastructure costs, less maintenance, and additional features available within the cloud environments. There are other factors to be considered, as mentioned: suitability of certain applications to be hosted in the cloud, and the accessibility of their data sources, which are wide and varied within our organization. And then obviously, as I mentioned earlier, the management of all the assets which have to be migrated, the scheduling for each phase, etc. And so it's exciting times ahead of us from an analytics point of view in terms of planning for the future, assessing the migration of our environment to the cloud and all the potential opportunities which come with that. So I suppose that's been a relatively brief overview of ULG's journey with BI and data analytics, or data analytics journey over the past close to 10 years at this point. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Declan. And I have to say, there was a question immediately coming in, and Gleb, I'm going to open your microphone so you can talk directly to Declan. How's that? Do you want to talk directly?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Actually, it's a very small and simple question. So business intelligence is usually something that we are talking about daily, and it's usually consisting of reporting, BI system, KPIs, and all these things. But do you have something apart from that, which is making your BI approach better or maybe more efficient? So this is generally my question.
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. I mean, I suppose the initial stages, I was mentioning, BI is what we were calling BI or analytics was essentially business reporting. I mean, that's, we would get a set of parameters or set of metrics to set up, and to manage and to monitor and provide that insight or essentially that measurement to the end users. So I could see if something was on track or off track. However, over the last number of years, we've essentially tried to migrate to actually interrogating our own data to provide insight that is not immediately obvious, and also derive more information from our data, in terms of opportunities for the business. So that includes analyzing our data to identify potential issues which clients may be facing, which they may not be aware of, for example, from the data we're getting, and also try to provide solutions using our data to clients or solve solutions for clients. And so rather than transitioning from just purely business reporting to, I suppose, a more BI-led approach in terms of actually utilizing the data we have. This also includes building data pipelines. So we obviously access data from various different sources, from our internal systems, our internal production metrics, or operational metrics. And there's obviously other applications which we use, sales, finance, etc., but also just the raw data we produce in terms of the content that's processed. Many of those are, I suppose, were siloed essentially. They were all coming from different applications. So our goal, and it's an ongoing goal and a challenging but exciting one, is to integrate those data sources, and try to utilize that to identify obviously potential opportunities for the business, but also try to identify potential issues which clients may be facing, and try to address those. And so that's, I suppose, I suppose, the core strategy at the moment in terms of the evolution of BI at ULG.
Thank you. In this case, I have second question.
Sure.
How difficult it was to build the integration points, because you have mentioned quite a few different sources of information, right? I would assume that some of them had already API capabilities or something like that, so that you are able to pull the data easily. But in most of the cases, it's not there. So did you face some challenges there?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. The data sources are very varied, as you mentioned. Some from, we'll call them well-known global applications which have robust APIs to connect to, or in some cases database connections which exist. They were obviously the more straightforward elements. Other elements, some of the data is being extracted from sources which are, I suppose, less robust from that point of view. So we absolutely did face challenges, and a big part of it was developing these processes to extract the data in an automated fashion. So developing scripts and tools essentially to extract. And Click, I suppose, without acting as a spokesperson for Click, but just in terms of the BI tool we use, has evolved, I suppose, from its own point of view in terms of the capabilities and the connections available to extract data from different sources. But absolutely, we have I suppose, quite an architecture, our backend architecture, in terms of how we're extracting data from the various data sources. But at this point, it is essentially it's essentially an automated. It's essentially all automated, and it's the pipelines essentially take care of themselves at this point. Obviously, all managed and evolve over time as new data sources arise. But there was a huge amount of work involved in not only connecting to that data, but also making it usable. So all the transformation steps that have been conducted in the back end.
Thank you. Then I have last question.
Sure.
As you have mentioned the automation quite a few times, and as far as I remember, you have mentioned also the case when you have around 120 automated reporting tasks kind of streamlined with the help of BI system. Could you give me some examples of those tasks?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially how the tasks work. So for example, I mentioned earlier that we use some of these tasks to actually even support processes. So for example, within our translation management system, there will be projects at a certain point in their life cycle. Those projects then will either need to be moved to next stage, either for billing or for shipping or whatever it may be. So we have apps obviously connecting to the data from our translation management system in this scenario. They're providing live data to the relevant team in that scenario. However, we don't expect our users to be checking projects which are various statuses at different points, or checking actions regularly. So what we have is we have automation set up to trigger the issuing of data when certain tasks hit a certain point. So essentially, the automation tool connects to our dashboards, extracts the data based on the parameters we've set up. So we'll have certain filters or certain fields applied within that automation. So if, for example, project X is at a particular stage, or based on date parameters, the data will be gathered and distributed then to the relevant users. The automation tool I referred to earlier in printing essentially distributes the data currently through email. So essentially, those over 120 automated tasks are primarily distribution of data through email. That then acts as a trigger for the users to then conduct the next step, whatever that means, whether that's financial billing, whether it's process related, or whether it's a manual task which has been conducted, based on the nature of particular projects that are decided upon. So, for example, if a project hits a certain parameters, there may be actions required for a user, or if it has certain particular needs. So there are a wide varied number of automation tasks set up which feed that. What we're moving into now as well in terms of our evolution is around alerting based reporting as well. So essentially setting up parameters for if metrics are on or off target. So again, that's quite KPI based, but also if for example, a particular value has changed. For example, if there's a revenue drop, or if there's a quality issue, or or a spike of certain type, that triggers an alert, which is then issued to the relevant stakeholders.
Thank you so much. I might have some questions later on, but I need to digest what you have just told. Thank you.
No problem, Glenn. Thank you.
Okay. That's fine. Let's see. I don't see any other questions for now. Just let's give it a second. And if you want to ask a question to Declan, you can either write it in the chat or raise your hand with the icon, of course, and I'll open the microphone for you. And just let me remind you that when I close the webinar in a little while, you'll see a feedback form. And I invite you to answer the 3-4 questions. It really takes only 10 seconds, but your feedback is very important for us. So let's see. Gleb, if you have, there are no other questions, so go ahead with you if you have another one, or we'll take leave.
Yeah, so ULG is a company which is based in Ireland, as far as I understand, but not exactly there, right? It's still spread around Europe.
So yes, so our headquarters is actually in Minneapolis, in
Okay.
Minnesota, in the US, and our European headquarters is in Galway, in the west of Ireland. We have a number of other offices, including a large site in San Antonio, in Texas. We have also a Barcelona office and some smaller offices globally. We also have a large production facility in Mumbai.
Okay, so the question is about, in general, the perception of the data. So as the company is international, I would assume that different teammates understand the system in a different way, and some of them would see the value right away. Others would be a little bit resistant to a change, or maybe to the new data set, or anything like this. Could you tell me just a bit more about what could be the difficulty there, and where it was identified, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, and actually didn't make reference to it when my presentation, but I think I did have it referenced in one of the slides, around one of the key elements we worked on over the past number of years. As you mentioned, we have a lot of strands to the business, different service lines and different locations, and you're absolutely right in that individuals will use data and see data in different ways. So one of the key elements for us was, as well as obviously having a consolidated BI department, for consistency and data quality, it was also really important that the understanding of data was consistent within the organization. I think I mentioned on the final slide that, or it's listed on the final slide, that one of the key elements was developing a data definition glossary. That's a global glossary for the organization. So essentially, ensuring that there's a standardized definition of data terms within the organization, and that can be very basic, from the understanding of certain type of revenue, for example, or even how then I'm sure what you probably experience in other organizations. Revenue can be referred to in numerous different ways, depending on whether it's a finance department, an operational department, etc. And obviously everything else from business terminology within the organization can differ greatly. So individuals from our interpretations side, our OPI side of the business, will have very little exposure to data terms on our translation localization side, for example. So standardizing the definition of data and having a repository for the individuals to essentially research or understand the data that they're viewing and that they're ingesting and engaging with was key. And so ensuring that there was a clear definition for everybody to understand what they're looking at, because as well as providing the data to the end users, the most important thing is obviously that they understand what they're looking at, and that they understand essentially what the data is trying to tell them, because obviously without that, it's very difficult for them to derive any actions from the insight. So standardizations and training was a big part of it, and also, as I mentioned, developing our data definition glossary.
Okay, there is another question. Who is BI reporting to, and how is the budget of the BI department decided?
Yeah, a good question. Currently, we sit under the finance team as it stands. Now, I know this does differ within different organizations, and I've seen experience of it in different organizations. But as it stands within ULG, yeah, we report up to we report under the finance team, and to the CFO essentially. And so that is essentially how the budget of the team is decided. Now, we are a relatively small team within ULG, but I mean, essentially a team that started from not existing a number of years ago to being critical and touching every point of the organization at this point.
Okay, thank you, Declan. Gleb, do you have any other question, or?
Well, actually, yes.
Well, we still have a little bit of time if Declan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
No
so Gleb, go ahead.
Look, in the language industry, a lot of companies are attempting to create something on their own, to have their own development department and so on. But this time you decided to go with a solution that was not created inside of your company. Was there any idea to do something on your own? Was it ditched? Why? Do you still have within your company some homegrown developments?
Yeah, so we absolutely do. I mean, development is a huge part of, and innovation is a huge part of ULG. But it's very much focused on client solutions in terms of, and obviously, and production efficiency, and obviously essentially addressing our client needs. So we do absolutely have our application development teams. The goal, the main, one of the main purposes of utilizing, Click in this scenario as a BI tool was essentially to remove the requirement for just purely reporting development from the application development team, so that they could focus on I suppose production development, feature development, app development. With the nature of our, again, as I mentioned, of our organization being numerous different organizations at different points, at different companies having been amalgamated under the ULG umbrella, meant numerous different applications providing very different services. So developing individual reporting within all of those different applications would not have been very efficient. Was one of the main reasons for that. Whereas with the BI tool, which is essentially can integrate from a data point of view all of these systems, which don't necessarily need to be integrated from a systematic point of view, was one of the big benefits as well to using a tool like Click from a BI point of view.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for answering.
You're very welcome. All right. Okay, I don't see any other questions, but I don't know, Declan, maybe you want to share your email in case people want to get in touch with you. I don't know.
I will, absolutely, yes.
Okay, excellent.
Put it in the chat. Let me see, do I have it at the start here? I think.
Yeah,
I'll grab it.
Yeah, just for a second, so that, yeah. All right, so thank you so much, Declan. Very, very good presentation for your first time at Gala. So please come back and present more. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, especially Gleb for the questions. We have one more webinar before the summer break. It's next week, same time as today. It's going to be on large language models. Everything you want to know, please come to the webinar and ask it to our expert. And then we'll take a break and we'll be back with a webinar program at the end of August. So, and we actually have a new webinar program. We will announce it very soon. So please keep an eye on our newsletters and on our socials. Okay, so thank you, everybody, and I hope to see you soon at another Gala webinar. Declan, once again, thank you.
Thank you, Isabella, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to present. I really appreciate it.
Very welcome. Okay, bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.